Welcome to Center Stage, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the first Water in Business discussion, from commitments to transformation. In March 2023, over 800 commitments were made to forward the water agenda. But these need to be made operational and made actionable. With us to discuss this topic, we have three experts. I want to welcome Federico Propezzi, Chief Technical Officer, UN Water, Caroline Black, Research Analyst, World Resources Institute, Sharif Hoke, Impact Lead, Water, H&M Group. Thank you. Makes my job easier. Federico, I have to start with you. Because, of course, this time last year, when we sat on this stage, slightly smaller stage, we were all looking to March 2023 and the UN Water Conference and what it would bring and the excitement in terms of this game-changing reality that we'd be moving into. I'd like to ask you to start a discussion today to give me your perspective of what came out of the conference in terms of the opportunities for cross-collaboration as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arti. And it's, of course, a great pleasure to be here and speak with you. Csaba, the President of the General Assembly, spoke this morning, and I think really the essence, the outcome of the conference is captured in the proceedings of the President of the General Assembly, plus also there is a full summary of the conference available from the UN Secretariat. Personally, here I bring my own personal views. I think when we look back at the conference, I think it will also be remembered because it has put the concept of water as a global common good really on the map. And this is something that I think it's still something that it needs to be unpacked, but it will stay. Now, the outcome of the conference, the body of the 832 plus voluntary commitments, the water action agenda, this is really what we have now to move forward. Caroline will tell us more about WRI's analysis of this, but roughly speaking, we have half of commitments made by civil society, 1/4 by governments, and the rest by everybody else. The commitments, they cut across all sectors. Now, this is very important because each one of the commitments really highlights which other SDGs it mostly linked to. And I think this is a great starting point for the cross-sectoral collaboration, if you want. And I'm happy to elaborate more as we move more into the discussion.
I think that's really important because we will come back to the need for aggregation and simplification when it comes to the different communities working towards potentially the same objectives. But given the cross-collaboration that you talk about, and of course, again, moving back to this time last year, a lot of discussion was talking about industry stewardship and the role that industry and the private sector really need to take if we're going to reach the goals that we have set. And of course, then, Sharif, if I turn to you, H&M has been doing many things to lead this discussion. We talked about decoupling your product from water, and H&M was, of course, present in March. From the industry perspective, if you were to speak for industry, what was your reaction and H&M's reaction or conclusions from what happened in March and what happens subsequently?
Thank you, Arti. I believe the science is very clear when it comes to what sort of actions need to be taken. And for freshwater, we certainly cross the safe and just limit of planetary boundaries, which means that the voluntary commitment is not enough, and hence it requires walking the talk more from the commitment to transformation into actions. And for industry, which we have been representing, we believe that the conventional way of conservation's efficiency is not enough to bring back us again in the planetary boundary. And having said that, we also believe that we need urgent actions, which need to be collaborated with the climate agenda that we are having right now, because we believe that there is no net zero without water.
So with that, so H&M is making their position very clear. I guess the question then becomes, are other industries making their position as clear when it comes to water in the same way. And we're very, very, of course, happy to have WRI and Caroline with us to shed light on some of the findings from March onwards about commitments and the people actually making those commitments.
Yeah, so Charles Iceland and myself evaluated 800 of the commitments between the lead up to the UN conference to May. And I'll present some of those findings, and they're represented in a blog that came out right around the conference as well on the WRI website. But yes, there is a widespread of commitments. Many sectors are touched, but it's not always balanced across sectors. And in order for those commitments that are of those 836 to really have teeth and have impact, they need to have monitoring and evaluation, and they need to have clear funding sources. We found that of those 800 evaluated up to May, only 26% had clear definitions of their funding sources. So that in the near future needs to be made eminently more clear. We also found that the sectoral breakdown was more uneven, with about 46% of the commitments from NGOs, 26% from government, 11% from multilateral organizations, such as the UN, and then a smaller number from business. And of course, business often use synergetic commitments through other NGOs like CDP and engaged with their commitment as well, but not so many standalone just from industry.
I think you make an important point here because, of course, in addition to the breakdown, which is not huge in terms of numbers that you've presented, industry has no number, is also the question of the different frameworks. You mentioned CDP and the cross-collaboration there. And that's something that comes into focus when you talk about the commitments coming out of March. CDP, you mentioned, we have different frameworks and reporting. Sharif, you're sitting on the receiving end of these frameworks. And I have to ask you as industry, what is your response to the overwhelming reporting and monitoring that you have to do that is fitting into these commitments, voluntary as they may be?
No, you rightly said that we are kind of quite overwhelmed with the kind of a data sets that has been needed, and sometimes it's not that we have been prepared or whether we need those things to see the impact that we like to do. And I see there is clearly two kind of issues over here. One is the definition issues within the organizations. Like, if I understood water consumptions for these organizations, the same, the other reporting method probably they have been asking in a different way. And the other one is that alignment. We have been reporting in so many platforms, and sometimes it's been kind of probably too much for us to kind of separate what has been exactly needed and then what has been we have been asked for. And coming to that point, when starting from next year, we will be eventually exposed to more EU regulations in terms of water reporting. It is very much important that we speak the same language and definitions rather than asking for many different sort of data. And this is where I believe that a clarity in definitions and alignment is needed within the different kind of reporting initiatives.
And that's actually where I'd like to come back to Caroline, because, of course, this fragmentation, this kind of overload of information coming into the different players who actually want to help, who want to lead, who want to make a change, is understood and needs to be kind of remedied. WRI is actually doing this and creating kind of collaborative frameworks that can cross-rectify across potentially climate, water.
So I won't take sole responsibility of WRI. We're definitely plugging into as many of the collective action frameworks as we can. And WWF actually had a session yesterday where they kind of clearly laid out a lot of the collective action initiatives, and Sharif was a panelist with me on that as well. And the opportunities for companies, government, NGOs to kind of continue to collaborate with those initiatives as well. Two of them I'll just call out were Alliance for Water Stewardship's Accelerator Program, and then the Water Resilience Coalition 100 Basins Initiative, which looks at the 100 most stressed basins and tries to kind of silo and funnel companies towards those ones to offer the most immediate action on the ground. us as NGOs, we're also trying to align in the data that we provide and make it more clear. So we know there's multiple offerings for global models. There's the water risk filter and WRI aqueduct tool. We have a session later this week where we kind of parse out the different benefits of each of those tools, and we're trying to align in understanding across sectors for those, as well as just the basin naming schemes, making sure that those are clear from different data sources, and that there's kind of clarity and understanding where companies are acting and the naming scheme of that basin as well. And then that's communicated both to other businesses and everyone else, other stakeholders.
So this morning, during the opening session, we had Arup talking about some of the importance when you have this definition and you start aggregating according to basins, like you say. This then goes across geographic boundaries that we as urban dwellers are accustomed to. So the city, the state, the village, it all kind of morphs into the basin. I just want to give you a quick follow-up question. What are you seeing when you start mapping the basins and you start crossing otherwise kind of considered boundaries which are more kind of urban-centric?
Yeah, so we also, just tying back to the analysis, found that 60% well, we didn't find, but we highlighted the fact that 60% of the world's freshwater sources are transboundary. So it's a complicated landscape, and just tying in as many voices as you can and kind of driving down to that local level and tying in local stakeholders, data from high-level global models to local models as well and finding as clear a photo and picture of on-the-ground situations as you can is key.
And daunting.
Yes.
It's a lot of work. So coming back to Federico, because Sharif asked the question and actually put the gauntlet on the table. So now I'm going to ask you the question. We have over 800 voluntary commitments. As impressive and overwhelming as they can be, my question to you is, should they stay voluntary?
I didn't know you were asking this question, otherwise I wouldn't be here.
No?
No, well...
And also to give us, because of course there are many ways in which we can understand. No, I know. But it would be good to get the pedagogical kind of understanding as to what UN Water or the other stakeholders feel when we talk about taking something from voluntary to mandatory, just so, not to put you on the spot.
I mean, the voluntary commitments are by definition, and I would even say by design, voluntary. Okay? So that doesn't mean that they carry no value. Okay? With the Water Action Agenda, with this body of hundreds of voluntary commitments, we have, for the first time in forever, okay, this online public list of commitments. Big, small, global, local, but they're all there. We never had that before across the whole water hydrological, the hydrological cycle and beyond. We have the private sector, we have so many different stakeholders. So what to do with this? I think it really is up to us to make the best of this. Because I think more than this, currently, in this current geopolitical situation, we cannot have. Okay? So I very much believe that further analysis is actually what we need. Filling gaps. I mean, it has been said, if you actually open up all the commitments, you'll find there is so much missing information, okay? This is actually what we need to do. So our colleagues, for example, from the UN Secretariat, they will very soon reach out to all voluntary commitments holders, owners, to do this, to fill the gaps, to also ask, what happened, what is happening. And this hopefully can feed in a bigger process which is way above our heads. It's something which is currently being discussed in New York by the member states, which is a possible General Assembly resolution on the follow-up of the conference, which may create a process where the results, the analysis of the commitments can feed, inspire additional commitments, inspire more action, and really push us forward in a virtuous cycle. We need this peer learning, we need benchmarking so we can really push forward. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, because of course there was a very provocative statement from Shaba this morning. Not provocative, but saying we need to do more. More than need to do more, we need to have regulation on the ground. We need to have an intergovernmental body to take this forward if we're actually going to be serious. I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on that?
Of course, I'm a firm believer. Of course, I couldn't agree more. It's something that we as UN family, we've really been working towards this for many years. We're so happy that there was a UN 2023 Water Conference after so many years. We're so happy that this inspired member states to actually enter into something that they don't do frequently, like negotiating on water. This is something they tend to avoid, but actually because of the momentum of the conference, also created by all the stakeholders, the civil society, all private sector, academia, this is something that it is important. Actually, if you open up newspapers, you have it on the front page of every newspaper how serious the water crisis is. So this is something that push governments as well in New York to talk about this. So, fingers crossed, maybe very soon we will have news, you open the UN news from New York and you read, okay, member states decided.
And it was said here, World Water Week 2023, just so everyone knows. No, but Caroline, I'm going to ask you to follow up on Federico, because when we spoke, you talk about the frameworks, the work the WRI is doing, the work that other membership-based organizations are doing to create capacity building for industry, to say, let us step in to help you understand net zero and water action agenda and how they come together. Is this something that would be helped by government regulation coming in? Is this something that needs it? What is your thoughts on what we need to do to actually make it easier for stewardship steps to be taken?
Yeah, well, I said when we spoke earlier that these voluntary frameworks such as CDP and TCNFD, they came out of a vacuum of regulation. And if regulation emerges, they will follow that lead, I'm assuming, and fill in and support those efforts as well. I will also add that there is some sort of a path forward. WRI did an analysis of kind of the cost of achieving water security in terms of access, and found that just 1% of GDP was needed by 2015 to 2030 to offer that globally. That's 26 cents per person. So it's not completely out of reach, and it's not a dead end. It is possible.
1% of GDP to achieve?
It was 1% of GDP to achieve secure water access. And that paper is called Achieving Abundance.
That's a hard number to ignore if it's put in context like that. But then I'm going to come to Sharif and say, you started off today's panel by saying you want industry to do more. You don't want these commitments to be voluntary. You actually want to see money put behind this. You want to see intent put behind this. So from H&M's perspective, when it comes to industry stewardship, in terms of rallying the call, if you like, what is H&M looking to see as we move forward from March? Because Federico makes a point, having this conference was in itself a huge happening. It hasn't happened before. Well, 77 years ago, I think it's happened. But it hasn't happened in this context with this intent. But industry will play a huge role in the next steps. 1% of GDP, of course, is the cost we're talking about. But a lot of that innovation and intent comes from your side. So what is H&M going to do?
I think the urgency has been pushed up with the strategy that we have been said is objectively looking at two areas where we should act more. One of the area is that we need to innovate more. And when we say innovations, which means that the way conventionally we do use water in our value chain or supply chain, that can't continue. That has to be stopped. And that's what we have been saying, that how we decouple water from fashion. And this means that we see a near future where we do not use water at all. And how we will do that? I mean, we have been looking at technology like waterless dyeing. for cotton, polyesters, and everything. We are looking at other innovative technologies which will significantly reduce the water, energy, and chemical uses into our productions. We have not been talking about 20%, 30% less. We have been looking at least that has to be taken out 50% of the input of the resources. So we are heavily looking at those innovations, scouting, piloting, and actually investing into some of the pilot projects that we, in future, the industry can have. Because we believe that the current linear way of taking water, use it, and discharge it, that has to stop, and that is our responsibility comes in, that how we should kind of change the model that we are having right now. The other one is, of course, the access to finance that you have been talked about. We are one of the pioneers when it comes to climate-linked bond, and we have actually have access to that bond even from a water perspective as well. So we have been kind of open to funding water recycling projects in our business partners. We are also investing in sustainable production processes as well. And we believe that that will essentially help our value chain to decouple the water intake, and also looking at the futures where probably the fashion doesn't need water anymore.
So then you touch upon innovation, but also the way you're already, by what you're saying, aggregating the people that you're working with. And I think you said you work in a team that's made up of a cross-sectoral interest as well. When decisions are taken, they're not taken in silos, quite literally, in terms of how H&M is working. And then it comes to the question on finance and working in silos, because we've had a lot of discussion in the last 10, 20, 30 years about climate change. There's been a lot of space taken up in the room about financing climate change. There's been a lot of bonds, green bonds, sustainability bonds created to finance climate change. So now I want to ask you, from the water perspective, how do we enter this discussion? Is it separate? Is it dovetailing? Is it parallelly? Do we work with them? Do we work on the side? Because this money has to support multiple objectives, and water is a critical component, as everyone is talking about, within the climate discussion. But is it being seen to be on the side of it when it comes to where the money is being financed? I'm going to come to you, Caroline, first, and then Federico, I'm going to come to you after.
Yeah, I'll use a quote from WRI's former water program director, Betsy Otto. She would always say that if climate change is the shark, then water is its teeth. And I think that is a perfectly apt metaphor. And that we, as the water community, just need to do a better job of showing that synergy, that climate resilience is water resilience, and showing that broader picture.
I'm actually going to push you a little bit more.
Sure.
Because what we need to do, and we talked about in the opening, is find this pain point, find something that resonates, so we can actually create this package model for finance in the water sector. What is that? What could that be? Because of course, like you say, the extreme weather events, that's not doing it.
Yeah.
We're reading about it every single day, no matter where we sit. Global North, Global South, doesn't matter. That's not doing it. What can?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, it's offering more opportunities for projects that have co-benefits on the ground and making it easier to identify projects and offer funding and offer collaboration and funding. But it's also, from the implementer perspective, it's really thinking how the climate people and the water people can work together to find outcomes for everyone, and through innovation as well.
Federico.
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, I think, of course, here it's not a matter of, competition between, climate change, activities or others. It's about bringing it all together. Now, it is true that our community, the water community, I think we've been quite good at developing the investment case for water, yes, but maybe not enough has been done to reach out to the other communities, climate change, environment, etc., where you do have big funds, you do have opportunities for financing. Now, especially if we look at climate change, it is not surprising, that we haven't been able to tap into that, into those resources, because the actual case for water to be at the table at the climate change negotiations, it's just starting to be there. We know very well, and actually we are here in Stockholm, and CIWI itself is one of the main organizations that is leading this work to reach out to the climate community. But reality is that I think we're missing some key links with the actual analytical links with the climate negotiators. So there's still a mismatch between what the climate negotiators need in terms of that they need to keep as part of the briefing notes, and what the water community provides. Saying that water is important and that climate is water, yes, it's all good and fine, but actually negotiators need numbers. And we're not there yet, but I see very good developments in that direction. I think what has happened since Glasgow is very good. The fact that now the water community has been able to link very much with COP28, it's absolutely fantastic. But of course, it's not, this is just the beginning, I think, because to reach out then to the climate funds, it's something that will still take time. Thanks.
So with that, I'm going to ask you all one last question. And in context of the World Water Week and what we're talking about here, which is seeds of change and innovation, and you touch upon needing more evidence and more data to actually make the case, in the next 4 days while you're here, looking at finance and to kind of push this discussion forward, bringing different communities together, aggregating, what would you like to see happen as a result of the communications and discussions happening here? Innovation, data, finance, and the output.
I think I will go back to what has been discussed in the morning as well, that we want to see more change agent. It's not enough for one actor to do all these things. I think, as we say, that there is no clean fish in a dirty pond, which means that we need to have more people coming together and join hands together in collaborations. And when we are collaborating each other on all these different areas, probably then we see the change that we want to see.
So for you, collaboration is going to be critical.
Yes.
Caroline.
Yeah, local data is always hard to aggregate and synergize, and everyone walking around at World Water Week has so much data within their organizations. I hope that the businesses can collaborate with utilities to kind of provide a clearer picture on the ground in certain high-risk areas, and that the NGOs as well can help kind of visualize that into more local, zoomed-in data sets that can help the situation on the ground.
So now you're focusing on collaboration on the ground level, actually between public bodies in this case, as you said, and that's going to be critical.
And facilitate information sharing as well.
So actually open up your data sets to actually engage. All big ask. Federico, the last word is with you.
Wow. So I think the reason why I come here to Stockholm almost every year is because it's a great place to meet, to be part of the water community. And this is, I think, what we need. Collaboration, absolutely, especially when we need to be united with messages, inputs to a process which is very political, like the CCC Convention, the Climate Change Convention. These are the places where the water community come together, build bonds, partnerships, to then go to the other processes united. Because unless we do that, it took 27 COPs to get water, just the word water in the outcome document. Mm-hmm. So this is the result of fragmentation, actually. So opportunities like Stockholm, they really bring us together. Thank you.
I think we couldn't have ended it in a better way, that we're coming here together to work together and build so we can move forward together and actually collaborate. Thank you. Please join me in giving them a warm hand of applause. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts.